Hello, my name's Terry Harrison and I'm going to show you how to paint a snow barn. I've already traced this down onto Bockingford watercolour paper. The first stage is putting on masking fluid. But before I start using the masking fluid, take your brush, wipe your brush over a bar of soap. This will protect your brush from the masking fluid. Then dip the brush into the masking fluid and I'm going to just drop some masking fluid on the top of the fence. So this is going to represent the snow when I remove the masking fluid. So it sits on the top of the fence like that. Some ruts in the track in the snow that comes forward like that. And on the branches of the trees, this is where the snow just sits on the branches and twigs like that. You don't have to mask off all of them, just a few bits and pieces. Wash the brush out. Then you can use a ruling pen. Now this is a pen for applying things like masking fluid. You can also use watercolour in the pen as well. Dip the pen into the masking fluid and paint in some grasses in the foreground. And for the snow on the top of the trees, what you need is just a piece of kitchen towel, screw it up into a pad, then put some masking fluid onto a saucer and very carefully just pat the masking fluid over the top of the trees. And just down here at the back of the barn. Then we allow the masking fluid to dry. The next stage is the sky. We're going to do the sky wet into wet. So wet the sky area first with some clean water. I'm using the large golden leaf brush and bring that down to the horizon and carefully paint around the roof. This is important because if you have the roof part wet, the sky will just bleed into the roof. So very carefully paint around the roof line. Then ultramarine. Drop that into the sky there and leave these patches of white for the clouds. Another blue area there, leaving the cloud at the top of the painting. Go over the trees, then with some ultramarine and burnt umber. So ultramarine, burnt umber, mix that together to get a grey colour and drop that darker colour underneath the clouds. So this is the shade under the clouds, and bring that down so it sits on top of the roof there. And it gives you a nice contrast between this the white of the cloud and the snow on the roof. Finish these off. So this is wet into wet. Then we just leave the sky to dry. The next stage are the trees. So I'm going to use some ultramarine with some burnt umber. So it's a grey colour. And just stipple, using the fan stippler, over the trees in amongst the masking fluid. Use a piece of paper as a mask. Mask off the roof and stipple. Touch more blue. Bring that down, and with the straight edge from the paper, mask off the wall of the barn like that. Change the colour slightly. Let's use the colour shadow, it's a purpley colour. Again, using a piece of paper as a mask and stipple that into that tree at the top. Into there, and the trees in the corner. Stipple, change the colour again add some burnt sienna, which is a nice warm brown colour, and stipple that into there. Bring that down towards the roof. Right, burnt umber. Some green. This is some midnight green, so it's nice and dark. Paint in some holly and some ivy. Reminds me of something, that. And some burnt umber into there, just underneath this masking fluid on the bushes. Then, using the foliage brush, again with the mask and the colour shadow, mask off the horizon and stipple along the edge of the paper. So a hedgerow and some trees, like that. Change the angle. Some shadow with a touch of burnt sienna. Another bush there and hedgerow. Then back again for another field in there. Some burnt sienna with some shadow. And a hedge coming away from the barn at the back of the fence there. Then let that dry. The next stage, I'm going to paint the brick walls at the front of the barn. So using some burnt sienna, fairly wet, paint that in. So this is just one colour up to the top of the wall towards the end of the barn there. And while that's still wet, use a touch of shadow and run that underneath the eave of the roof. And again, while that's still wet, just bring that down into the wet. Just touch the brush onto the paper and you get this mottled effect underneath the eave, underneath here. Bring that down. This section of the wall is going to be quite dark, so I'll paint that in. Well, I'll just put a bit of a coat on there just to start it off, but I'm going to come back to that a bit later. And while that's again still wet, with some sunlit green, and just drop that into the bottom part of the wall. This will make it just a little bit more rustic. Then repeat the same thing on the end wall. So burnt sienna, shadow, then with some green, some shadow, paint in the end wall here, over the masking fluid, and just let that dry off. With the same large brush, we're going to paint the woodwork at the end of the barn and also the porch. Burnt umber with some ultramarine. So it's really quite dark. Start at the top, comes down. There's the snow on the other part of the roof there. Start to bring that down. Change the colour slightly. Some more ultramarine. So a touch more blue. Put that into there. Push it into the dark colour. Then some burnt umber into there. So it's a little bit lighter. Then with some raw sienna, it's quite a light colour, and I'm going to drop that into this bottom part of the painting. And you can see how the paint pushes the other colours away. So you've got this light patch at the bottom of the wall, and this is like the reflected snow, the light coming back onto the end of the barn. Similar thing on the porch. Then allow that to dry. With the medium detail brush, I'm going to use a mixture of burnt umber with some ultramarine. So it's a greyish colour, not too dark, and wash that colour over the barn door. So it's light, touch more blue, and drag that down. Leave a bit of white, just again to make it look a little bit more rustic. And with some ultramarine and burnt umber, just while that's still wet, just touch that underneath the roof line and just let that bleed down into the wet. Like that. And with the dark colour, just finish off this board across the bottom part of the barn door.